We are the Hangout Live right here on Facebook. It's Drake. It's Robbie Lochner. What's going on, brother? You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Oh, dude.
Now you got me.
Rookie mistake. What's happening, brother?
I hit the button. It just didn't do anything.
Right? That's what I always say, too.
Yeah, right.
Uh-oh. Robbie's freezing up on us.
Hey, that's why we need assistants to hit the button for us. No.
Right. Right? Let's not have any internet issues tonight.
I hope not.
You got your...
So for tonight, guess what I've got?
What you
it's
got?
Called Hot for Teacher. So the Hot for Teacher, well, since Jessica's a teacher, Hot for Teacher, get it? Huh?
Mm-hmm. She's a hot teacher, too, let me tell you.
Hot teacher.
So it's been a while, dude. It feels like forever since last week, dude. It really does, actually.
Kind of does, huh?
Right? So we've got to give it up to our sponsor, Backbeat Music. We've got a new sponsor that just joined us. His name is Jody Gentry with Media Jaw. Oh, cool. And they're going to be helping out with the website that's coming up next week, which will be www.thehangout.live.
And of course, my wine sponsor, Brad and Kim, right? My wine sponsor, they keep me drunk on the show. No, I'm kidding.
You know, Brad and Kim, it wouldn't be bad to, send the other host a bottle here. I'm just, putting it out there.
Other than the fact that he doesn't drink.
I drink some wine.
You do?
This is my shocked face.
Yeah. He's just like David Lee Roth. He's got the bottle that you think he's drinking the whiskey, and it's Kool-Aid.
I have a big glass of
sugar-free Kool-Aid.
Actually, it's Jolly Rancher water.
Nice.
It's a little mixed packet. You put it in the water. It's sour green apple. It's really good. But we'll call it whiskey for the intents and purposes.
He's getting drunk.
Right?
So anyhow, tonight's show. So we got on. Who do we have tonight?
We've got Magic Moreno. Dude, it's going to be so epic. This guy, his resume, we're going to get into it in the show, but dude, I'm almost fangirling. I don't get nervous. You know me, brother. I don't get nervous and I don't get all about Slayer. This dude, this dude's legit.
It's funny because I worked with him, and I'll talk about when we first met in 1996. And I had heard he'd worked with some people. I wasn't sure. It wasn't even clear who. Yeah, he's worked with some national artists. Okay, cool. Yeah, I know.
We've got.
And the only way I found out, and the truth, the honest truth, is we were recording in his studio where he's at right now. It's in his house, and we were recording. And I looked on the wall, and I see this album with his name on it, and it's Barbra Streisand. And I was like, oh. So you work with Barbra Streisand? Oh, wow. Yeah. And then look at the next one, another platinum album, and it's Eric Clapton. I'm going, oh, you work with Eric Clapton? Oh, yeah. I was like, really like, yeah, no big deal. Not that, oh. Well, guess who you're working with right now?
Robbie Lochner. Right on, brother. So, hey, people stick around because at the end of the show, we're going to announce the winner of the autographed t-shirts, that the Hangout shirt, that you can actually buy these shirts, but this one has been autographed by everybody, including it's you and me and Morgan Miles.
Oh, cool.
So how cool is that, man? So we're going to give this away at the end of the show for hitting 2,000 likes this week, and I think we just get right into it, shall we?
Let's do it. Let's bring Magic in.
Let's bring Magic over. Ding dong.
There he is. Hey, Magic.
He looks
incredible. Hello. Hi there.
What's up, brother?
Sorry to be out of the room at the quintessential moment. I kept checking back.
Got to fill the glass up every once in a while.
Indeed you do.
Indeed. Magic, I appreciate you, my brother, for coming on the show tonight, man. And we're so blessed to have you on tonight. I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation. And Robbie has been my brother and soulmate for years and years and years. And it's so good to not only see him in the flesh and blood, but also to to hear, these are great, great programs you guys are putting on. So it's a real pleasure to be a part of it.
Thanks, brother. Thanks. So you're sitting in the studio there. Are you doing work currently?
Yes. Kind of concurrently, I'm mixing 3 albums at the same time, kind of. But they come together in different ways. One of them has been going on for a year, very slowly coming to fruition. The other one has just, all right, here, we're doing it. The songs, boom, boom, boom. And another one is a very theatrical, wonderful artist out of Texas. And I kind of took the bull by the horns when, with the COVID virus and everything going on in that way, where everybody needs to do things remotely, especially me, because I have a few immune system health situations. So right. I right away to some of my favorite stable musicians, including Robbie, set up remote sessions and remote equipment and sent microphones and mic pre's all over the place. And a lot of my brothers from the post-production situation, they have been doing the same thing. I hear that a lot of editors that I work with, their companies are building rigs and just sending them out to artists as they need so they can do ADR work from wherever they are.
Nice. Nice.
Asked one thing and I talked forever. Excuse me.
No, great. And the technology is amazing too. I mean, we worked together recently with this VST Connect, and it's like, this is just, it's wild to be able to record in real time. Magic puts the track in my studio, so I'm hearing it. We plug in, obviously I have my mic, my amp, my guitar, my mic pre, but it goes to him and he records it. I don't, it's not going through my Pro Tools.
And that's really, really great. It's great innovation. But, I see there seem to be like 3 or 4 different flavors of this, because when Steinberg first came out with that software, it didn't quite work right. And every time, excuse me, Steinberg guys, if you're listening to me, sorry about this. But, they always say, well, we'll send it to Germany for them to take a take on it. Well, a year and a half later, nothing happened. But I was able to, finagle it through different ways to do it. But there's recording the artist's tracks in my studio straight through. There's also a remoting to a place where we get a Zoom meeting, and also where different plugins where you hear off their stereo bus. And they record there, and I can still produce it from here. And then there's all kinds of permutations in between, because some people really don't have good hardware, or they've got a poor mic, or they've got a bad internet connection. And between it all, you just have to weave your way through in this day and age.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do a radio show on Jack FM every morning, and I've had to now bring it into the home to try to do everything. And it really limits everything I can do. I can't really do some lives and take requests and stuff like that. And I'm really trying to figure that out. So, man, maybe I'll get your number and pick your brain a little bit.
Well, it's all born out of necessity.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
absolutely. So, Magic, I hope you don't mind, my brother, but I'm going to brag on you. Okay. So we're going to take a moment here just to brag on you. All right. Because your resume is unbelievable. Unbelievable. So let's talk about it. We've got, first of all, obviously you're internationally known producer, engineer, writer, singer, performer in your own right. You've got 9 gold or platinum albums to your credit, 3 Grammy nominations. You also work in the film industry with clients such as Universal, Fox, Warner Brothers, HBO, Disney. You've worked on movies such as Star Trek, Avatar, A Perfect Getaway, Law Abiding Citizen, Inglourious Bastards, Pacific, Robin Hood, True Grit, Glee, and Morning Glory. And then we get on to
Beavis and Butthead. I remember you did that. I remember you telling me you were listening to it. I remember when you were working on it. You go, hey, I'm working on the Beavis and Butthead movie.
And then we've got, artists that you've worked with: Barbra Streisand, Eric Clapton, the Commodores, Michael Jackson, Miles Davis, Natalie Cole, Phil Collins, Tina Turner, David Lee Roth. And I'm sure that there's just a ton more.
I think that resume or bio, whatever you're reading, I think that's current to about 15 years ago.
Wow, brother.
So
wow.
Yeah, there have been lots of stuff going on. And well, thank you for saying all those things. As we get a little bit older, you tend to forget some of the things, because I started my career when I was 21. So it was only in 1975 or so when I got the first call to do a major tour. And I don't even remember some of that. I remember I was on a payphone for that call, and my son was being born in the 2 rooms down. I was in the hallway at the hospital for that gig. So it's like everything kind of becomes a little bit of a blur. But, you know, to hear you say some of that, you brought back a lot of great old memories.
So who was the tour? Who was the first tour you did?
That was Aretha Franklin. That was the Washington, D.C. leg, that part of the country. They had been traveling with, I guess it was 12, 4, 2, and 2, a string section. And they didn't want to pay for everybody to go to this sequence of gigs. So the ARP ensemble, remember right after Moog came out with like the 2100, 2400, and then ARP came out with the new ensemble that could actually synthesize strings. So they gave me a stack of string charts and said, would you please come synthesize the strings for us?
Wow.
And, yeah, so that worked out really nice.
So for what I remember talking to you, you had mentioned that that's how you got your start into mixing because Aretha gave you tapes to mix or something. Is that right? That's what I remember you telling me.
Well,
how you transitioned into that.
That was a little odd. Yes, it did. It transitioned into that because she came in one afternoon and asked me to put up a couple of rough mixes. But in order to do that, you have to understand why I was there at the studio to start with. Are you sure you're up for this little?
Yes.
I'll try to make it.
Yes.
Nice.
No, we want to hear it. So yeah.
All right. So just coming out of the Mitchell Singing Boys, which is a famous choir that I started from, well, I didn't start, but I was there from 8 till 13 years old. So we toured a lot, did a lot of motion pictures, radio, and whatnot. So I was kind of a showbiz schooled kid on the studios. So I got out of there with a really big head, thinking that, hey, I could be band leader, I could do anything I needed to do, and right away, because that had been my whole life at that point. So I got into normal life, and at like 14, 15 years old, first bands, I had all the musicians in the area of West Los Angeles. Stuff was going on, but one of them was a dear friend that is passed away now. As a matter of fact, I went recently to Tony Alfree's memorial service. Charming, wonderful guy, played bass. But his father was the accountant for H.B. Barnum, who was Aretha's music director. So I also had an electronics degree. I kind of, through my years in high school, I went to Ogden Electrical, and I got a degree, and so I got hired to help put in the console there. So once that was done, Aretha happened to come in and said, Magic, what do you think? Can you put this up for me? I want to hear what we did here. So, you know, being a musician, you know where the drums and bass and guitars and things ought to be. It's like a no-brainer, but I hadn't been an engineer. Prior to that, I started engineering with 4-track cassettes and 2-track cassettes first, where I'd record the group on the 2 tracks, mix it to 1 track of this other 2-track cassette, then record on the other one, and then take those 2 tracks and mix them back again. That was my form of overdubbing prior to like the TIAC, you know, for sound on sound, real machines around. And so I put up a good mix, and that was the start of an assistant engineer in records at that time. Wow. And that's how that came to be. At the same time, I also got into post-production as well. And that was through, it's Evergreen Studios, but it's not Barbra Streisand Studios. This was do you remember these studios in Burbank, Robbie, where it was called Evergreen? It was a film scoring studio, but it wasn't associated with Barbra. Later on, I worked with Barbra, but I started in post-production there, assistant engineering for recording orchestras, and then over to MGM, and I was doing post-production, everything from the assistant on the scoring stage. I think I was effects editing, video layback. Yeah, and there at that studio. So all of that was kind of conglomerate going on at the same time. And it was an interesting time for me.
So you grew up on studio lots. Now, I know you learned how to play the violin at age 4, correct?
Yeah, my mom, she played in a local orchestra, so she wanted me to start really young.
And then you were playing the Hollywood Bowl at the age of 6?
Where did you get that? Boy, you guys did some good research. Yeah.
That's the Mitchell's Boys chorus, right? That's how I kind of wanted to hear a little bit about that too, how that all came about, because that's, you know, it was a big deal at that time, right? I mean, that was a
Yeah, we were like the Vienna Boys Choir of the United States. And
Wow.
well, yeah, we would, I did 2 or 3 tours with them. And so out of the year, you were touring 4 to 5 months and schooling either on the studio sets or on the radio sets. So I remember KFI, I was a regular thing, but you know, you get attracted to the things that you like to do as a kid, and not so much standing and sitting and waiting for them to shoot a scene or that stuff. Now it was real exciting. Later on doing post-production, every time you get invited to the set, it's like a great thing. But back then, I used to like going to KFI Scout Jamboree, which we did every week. And I did some real nice solo work for those people. And that started the singing career because I sang, and I really don't like to boast about myself. I know that sounds really weird in an interview like this, but as much as you hear me talking about myself, it's, how would I want to say this? It's uncomfortable, but fun, because I've actually forgotten more than I think of on a normal basis. So thank you guys for that.
And I'll mention that I can totally, I had mentioned before last week and at the beginning of the show that that's true, because we played together in '96, and I didn't know who you had played with. I'd heard you'd worked with some people I didn't really know. And then I remember being in the studio when you built this studio and we were recording, and I turned around and I looked on the wall and there was a Barbra Streisand, you know, with your name on it. And I was like, oh, you worked with Barbra Streisand. And you were like, oh yeah. Just really like, oh yeah. Then I see Eric Clapton, I think it was August or Red or something, like the Red album. And it was the same thing. And I was like, oh, okay. It's like, okay. Of course, back then you didn't have the internet to do your research as easy. So it's kind of hard to try and pull stories out of you. So now I get to do it today.
Well, it's fun talking about the little facts that go into the different, you form a big story about a lot of, I was asked to do a bunch of interviews regarding David Lee Roth's Skyscraper album. And I remembered a bunch of stuff, but once, I started talking about it with the guys, and I got like I remembered the things that we would like do on the off times, and, ways that we would fool around, and, just kind of the fun things that you kind of don't think about anymore. It's crazy that way.
That's some of the cool stories that people love to hear, some of that kind of outside the, hey, what did you do? Not necessarily when you're tracking, but when you guys were on the off time having fun. That's the kind of stuff people like to hear. That's cool stuff.
Well, in as much as giving people what they like to hear.
Yeah, right.
Robbie, you're one of those people. I mean, I know you guys been doing this show for a while, so you know of Robbie's expertise. But just to change the focus, he spoke about Treason, the group that Robbie came to play with during the 90s that was there. Finding someone to not only be able to play that genre, being able to play it really well, being able to record it well, as you do, Robbie, and also being able to work together that way. Way back when is in the early 90s and 90s, that's when I really was cutting my teeth, as I was producing a bunch of different albums then too. And dealing with musicians for instance, if I'm part of the band, is different than dealing with musicians that I'm training for a show, which is different than dealing with musicians in the studio that you're producing. They all have their different mindset that you need to be with. And in all cases, they should be flattery to the point where you create performances and a mindset for an artist that makes them bigger than life, that gives that extra acting thing that makes it universally enjoyable and authentic, and having a genuine reality to it. Now, back then when we were working together, Robbie, you had that like right from the start. You were like genuine, you were not put on, you weren't over the top, you just played your ass off. You're fun to be with on stage. I mean, just it was the best. It was just really, really nice times back then.
Well, you know, it's interesting, the story. I'll tell the story when we first met. I had heard you guys were looking for a guitar player, and I had a friend of mine who told me, and I knew Glenn was in the band, and I had met Glenn, and I didn't have his number though, and I couldn't contact him. So I said, hey, give me Glenn's number. I want to go and audition for the band. And he wouldn't give me the number. And then time had passed, and I guess you guys kept auditioning. And then he goes, yeah, they're still looking. I go, dude, just give me the number, you know? And he did. And then I ended up coming in. I don't know how many people you had auditioned. I don't really know the story. I just know that it had gone on a little while. And I still remember I walked up and I had torn up shorts on. I mean, I was totally not dressed the part. I had like this raggedy shirt on that I sleep in. And I don't know why I would even go out of the house like that. But I did. I just kind of walked up like, okay, let's just play. You know, and I'd learn the tunes. And, and I still remember, I don't know if you remember this or not, but you told me afterwards that as soon as I walked up, as soon as you saw me, you knew I was the guy. I don't know if you remember that.
Well, I don't remember that in particular. I do remember why I would have said that. And here's a little background for that moment in time too, because I have a spiritual background. This is aside from music, aside from all that, but it came way back from the Mitchell Singing Boys. All right, so I'm going to reference that. Because we were a singing boys group, and I mean 3-part harmony, 8 boys. So the two on a part for the lower parts, and the upper parts had 4 parts, 4 singers on it. So the leader of this group, Bob Mitchell, was not only a theologian, but a music theory. He was like the foremost pipe organ and silent movie organ player. I mean, this is since the 30s he was. So this guy just had music theory and experience just exuding from him. And on top of that, he was also a theologist. So because of our stature as a singing group, we sang for everybody from, you know, the norms that, you know, the Jewish community, Catholicism, Episcopalian, all of them, but everything from Christian Science to Mary Baker Reading Room to the Greek Byzantine. I mean, the most bizarre things in the world you'd ever figure, but they had the money and we would come play, and we were very theatrical. So, you know, way back when, you know, we know when to play to the ladies and how to sign autographs and do all that gorgeous stuff. But when I left there, I had this knowledge of, for everyone we would sing for, the leader would explain to us theology behind it. So, and you know how everybody, they say, all paths lead to the same place. They all go up the mountain to the same place, but they all have their different paths that they come up. So he would explain to us why the Buddhist form of meditation was this way, why the Greek Byzantines believed this, and why it was different from their catechismal understanding, and how the Latin had grown up through the blah, 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 blah. But after 5 years of that, you come out of there, and I came out and said, you know what? What I used to believe doesn't get it for me anymore. It's too cartoon. It's not what I believe. So I started a spirituality that has to do with, I won't get far into it, but it has to do with the Creator being individualized in every person. So you respect every person as a God being. And that is what I saw in you, Robbie. You are that plus, and you know, that present company not excluded. I'm sure you're the very same way, but you know, we don't have the same history that Robbie and I do.
Right.
But as far as that moment goes, you can tell me from your association with Robbie is that you see a clarity in his eyes. You see the beauty of the person there, and there's not a lot of noise in the life that complicates it. And he's very focused. I remember one gig you broke a string, and I started to go crazy about it because I was the lead singer jumping around the stage, and he just played it off so perfectly, so well. He was a bit upset himself that because he had wanted to do a certain kind of performance for people that were watching us. But, you know, the showmanship never left. And I think showmanship is a really fine thing to have in common with people. Now, in the remote recordings that I'm doing, I'm talking to people like Don Perry from Aqualung. Who did Aqualung? What's the name of the band?
Jethro Tull.
Yeah, for Jethro Tull.
Yeah.
And just wonderful, wonderful players. And you speak to them about their studio and who they are as a being. And
Right.
I'll end up on the phone for like a couple of hours with these people because I understand something from the way that they relate and the thing that made them be in that position in time to have this stardom, you know, on so many big, giant, grand stages. And not just the stages, so different, so many formats that they shine in. So I'm using that spirituality all the time. And I did something with my studio when, tell me if I'm taking too much time talking about stuff you don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Is this cool?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, so at the time when my wife was dating me for about 7 years, she would not marry me because I kept going off to do album projects. And I'd leave for 2-3 months at a time, sometimes only a few weeks, but still, it was always, okay. So one of the conditions for getting married was to put in our own studio. But so I could bring people to me, you know, I would go as far as Bulgaria. I engineer in France, in Spain, and different areas, and you know, 5 albums in South America. So I'd be like taking off, and I'd take her with me at times, but you know, it got to be such. But when I put in this studio here, many off-planet masters, wherever you come down on that, or many knowing people on this earth that you would sit and meditate with, have verified the fact that sound, in the way that it's interpreted, is basically available for higher partial harmonics in the analog format. When it went to digital, it became a hard ceiling audio-wise of 20K, and basically ones and zeros going through an error correction circuit. But the analog aspect of sound carried that ability to speak to what's called the feeling body. That thing that made me know that Robbie was who he was. That body that surrounds all of us, so that you can hopefully tell about me that I'm an enlightened person, or at least a nice guy. And which, forgive me for taking that liberty with myself. And in the digital format, there is what's called the Nyquist limit of the sampling rate. And it's basically half the sampling rate. And that is basically what your digital machine is working at. So at 192K, which we're familiar with, the broadband Nyquist limit is around 100K, which these masters have verified is the bandwidth of your feeling body. You know, we're electrical beings. So this transition that goes between physicality, atoms, down to the microcosm to planets, it's all an electrical system of sorts. And they had verified that recording at 192 for spiritual projects that had great alacrity, elegance, but belief and reverence, and things where the artist would go through rapture, go through ecstasy, you know, having that experience, right? They would get that out of it. So I started I did that at great cost back then, you know, in 1990s, having everything to work at 192K was not possible. No reverb systems worked at that point. And so you needed really monster machines to be able to do everything the way you wanted to. So you do a mix of, you know, 225 tracks at 192K, you got a big file.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had various machines. Now that's all a little bit different. But my point is that these spiritual people, they would verify for me that they got tears when they sang with tears. They got the output reflecting what that input was. And, you know, it's arguable because, you know, engineers, they would say, well, wait a second, it's going to go to CD, it's going to go down to 44, 124, or 16-bit anyway. Well, I, of course, went back to different masters and whatnot, and they said, no, it attaches as a carrier frequency. Once it's there, that's what it is. It becomes part of that occurrence in the universe. So long story short, it was when I put in my studio, it was real expensive. And she had to love me a lot. And we were coming out of the era where you could do an album for 40 grand or 60 grand way back in the day.
Right.
Now you engineer a whole album from start to finish, and you're even with producing it, you're lucky if you're like 25 grand. It's like it's just things have changed. I got to teach a bunch of people throughout the years, and oddly enough, records is very different than post-production audio. I started, remember I told you way back in the 75, 79, 80s area, I was in post-production audio, Evergreen to MGM, they became Bennett, became Lorimar and Viacom, and then I was at Tadeo for years and years. You remember that, Robbie?
Oh, yeah.
Then everything from, God, I forgot where I've been. Paramount, I'm forgetting these great people that.
Capitol? Were you at Capitol too? Was it
Yeah. I was at Capitol, but just mixing records over there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wasn't on staff. Record studios I was on staff was like Ocean Way, Evergreen, various other places for here and there, but mostly everywhere else I was just bringing projects in and mixing.
Well, one thing that always stood out to me, it's a comment you made to me years ago relating to that, and I use this with artists when they come in, is you told me, how do you get somebody to smile on tape? This is the example you use, and you go, you smile while you're doing it. And I go, I always kept that, so I use that when I'm working with somebody, and it's exactly that. You're trying to make somebody sad, be sad. You're trying to make somebody happy, be happy. You gotta be those things in order for people to feel those things. I mean, the melody itself, of course, is strong, but you gotta have the emotion put out to make people feel that emotion.
That's true, and that's true. And there's something that you're saying that relates particularly to not trying to follow a fad, because when it's your emotion and when you're having a genuine interpretation of what you're doing as the artist, that is not something, you wouldn't do that by going, hey, the current record is going, hey, 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 so I'm going to go, hey, 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 hey. No, the authenticity is them being them. But how to be you if you have the self-deprecated mindset that somehow feels like, oh, I don't know, I'd love to be famous, but how could I be? Or how could somebody like me come from where I come from and get to there? Or who would pay attention, blah, 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 the endless stories.
Right.
So it becomes a real mind type of thing. And this is where I enjoy it. I enjoy talking to somebody and not just saying, we need to put the smile on tape. Yeah, that's very true. But getting you to put the smile on tape is getting you into that framework, to that knowledge that, and it's not far. It's not like I'm feeding people, excuse me, when you bleep bullshit, if I say that.
No,
it's
good.
Not, it's not the getting people to that point that's hard, because think about it. You can explain to somebody just uniqueness in such a profound way. The fact that, yes, we're the same in many ways, maybe color, maybe religion, sex, whatever you want to mention, but the uniqueness of the way that you put the dots together on any subject, the uniqueness of the way that your particular brand has interpreted what it is that the world has done to you or for you. And anybody will believe and acknowledge that. And just from the point of uniqueness is the fact that everyone is special. They're just different. And it's very easy. And then once you start to tell somebody the truth, you're beautiful because they are. You're expressive because you are. You have felt, you've been hurt, you've been these things. And this is what the world needs to hear from you. And that over the talk back is, you know, it's priceless. It's priceless. And I'm a big fan of when I teach my students how to produce, because I not only teach audio engineering, I teach producing. I tell them and warn them about the engineers that we've all been in the studio with that, you know, you're singing your heart out and you go, how was that? Oh, that was real good. Great. And you see him look at his watch. And then you sing something that's just abject foolery. And how's that? Oh, really good, really good, really good. Okay. You know, it's like engineers that are just keeping time and not actually being part of the experience.
Right.
I know we all have stuff there, but that's really, really keen. That's part of being invested in the artist, part of being invested in the playfulness, you know.
Right.
And you know, it's not that there isn't, you know, good opportunity to fool around. I mean, back in the 80s, 90s, if you were on a project with 2 engineers, and you know, there were so many drugs that were going through the studios in those days, and I got the opportunity to learn from like some of the best. I mean, really, some of the best. They would, you know, some people coming up in their engineering career are very introverted, good learners, solid technology. As you can tell, I came from being a showman. I came from being a personable person, and you know, I've had mixers take me to their home. I had, you know, different re-recording mixers, you know, invite me so many places because you make a real bond with people. So I learned things that they would never teach other engineers. I learned things that they would just, you know, over a glass of wine be going, and you know, when I might, you know, something on the order of Jimi Hendrix or Clapton or whatnot, or, you know, anybody, the greats, I would do this, but people don't know that I always add this, or I would put this in the signal chain, or, you know, I would always put these type of pads into the circuits, or, you know, just all these really, really important things. And it was a real dichotomy from the post-production audio. First of all, I would work a union job there, but through just luck of the people I'd work with, they would let me out for 3 months at a time to go do an album. Boom. I'd like, you know, take off to Caracas and I'd send them stuff. And sometimes, you know, well, I would bring them favors or whatnot. So it worked out okay. So that I would be let to go again and again. Things would happen where I did a 3-record set in Spain and the thing went long. I had 27 cuts to do and they had booked me for 3 weeks. And, you know, I'm telling them, okay, that's like a mix and a half every day to get through this amount of songs. So I would set up, I'd engineer 16 hours, have them take me back to the hotel for 8, pick me up, do 16, 8, 16, 8, whatnot. But it got so weird that I would be going to start my day at 3 a.m. and, you know, finish at, you know, midnight on that very same day. So things were weird that way. I don't know if you remember what my train of thought was when I ventured on this conversation, but I've lost myself.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Somehow I got into engineering in Spain. Oh, I know. I was teaching people about producing and about that it's a sacred trust when you do that. And somehow I forget where I got it off in Spain, but that goes back to a little bit of what I was talking about there. Set me straight. Say something funny.
Matt, you're muted, Matt. But while you're muted, I do have a story I want to tell too.
Oh, okay.
So 10 years before we met, I had heard of you through some girls you worked with. I played a show at a place called Rockers in Phoenix with a band called Vixen. Janet and Jan and Pia and Roxy. We did 2 nights with them where we played, I think it was an hour and a half, and they played an hour and a half, and then we played an hour and a half. And that night, they gave me this cassette that you produced. I
Hey,
don't think you can see it, but it's because I can't get it up there. But it's
what are the titles on that?
the titles on this are "You Ought to Know," "Leave Me Alone," and "Keep Me Wait" or keep me waiting. Great tracks. I mean, I absolutely loved it. I was going, this stuff is fantastic. And they told we love this guy. They're talking about, Magic. And I didn't put it together until 10 years later we met and we were playing together. And somehow they came up and you told me you produced some and the light bulb went on and went, oh my God, that was you they were talking about. Wow, what a small world, right? How it just, the energy kind of pulls you together. But I know you had produced more songs than these, but I loved these tunes. And then when the album came out, I think only one of these tracks made the record, and it's not as good as what's on here. I used to listen to this a lot. It was really good.
That's a great story. That's a great memory too. And you know what? The 1/2-inch 2-track from those mixes that cassette was made off of are upstairs in my vault.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
When every time I'd clean out my vaults at different studios, I'd bring them back to my studio. A lot of guys would recycle 24-track tapes so that they would go through. I'd always pay for them and bring them. So I have tapes from that whole era of people that I was producing back then. And you know what is Pia,
Yeah.
just she is Steve Vai's wife.
Yeah.
That's Pia.
Yeah, I heard she had married him and she was out of the band short before they made it. She wasn't with him when they actually broke. But I always think of, when I think of Vixen, I think of those 4 girls with Pia and Janet and Jan and Roxy. Back, that was 1986.
Wow.
And then it was literally 10 years later that we played together. It was 1996, almost to, I mean, it was kind of interesting when you think about it. I was like, wow, 10 years.
It's the energy, brother. It's the energy.
Yeah.
It is, and that was a really fine time for me. From another aspect, is because some of those cuts I did overdubs at Steve's studio in North Hollywood, or I guess I forget where it is, North LA, way back then, and I remembered from those sessions compressors that Steve liked. When I did the album for him, I reminded him, hey, remember this 160, that DBX 160 that you used to have way back in the studio? And that was a really funny moment. That was great. Okay. And I have one other story about that. This is sad. Jan has passed away.
Right.
Yeah, I know. And that's
probably been about 10 years, I think. About 10 years since she passed away?
That I don't know, because I have recently reconnected. Do you remember the drummer for Rick Springfield's band, Jack White?
No, I don't know him.
Well, I was producing with him back in that era, and he let me know that not too long ago.
Oh, you just found out. It has been a while.
Yeah, has it?
Yeah.
Because Jan had actually been at this studio here. She came to visit me, I think about, well, it might have been like 10 years ago now, but maybe 6-7 years ago, somewhere like that. So I was really, when I heard the news, I was really glad that her energy she was sitting right there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And that was like really, really fun to have.
Yeah, I mean,
hey guys, we've got a producer that wants to come in and ask a couple questions here. Let's.
You might recognize the producer.
You might recognize our producer there, Magic.
Who's that?
And she's coming in right now.
And you recognize the room too.
Hi.
Whoa, Pia? Is that?
It's Jessica. It's my wife.
Oh, Jessica. Damn.
He's going.
Well, hey, Jessica, I'm sorry. It said Ella on the screen, and also what's funny is we were just talking about Steve Vai's studio, and I can't really see your face because it's kind of silent. Pia had that same haircut, and that's the same blue in the back of their studio. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is really weird. Hi, Jessica. How are you? Great to see you.
Great to see you again. It's good to see you. I have some questions, and I'll tell you that I have like 3 pages of questions. So many people have been asking questions, but we're going to start off with 2, if that's okay.
Really? And that's okay. Every once in a while, you'll see me look up here. I have a copy of the screen that I see here on the laptop. I have it on a 55-inch screen up there. So I can see you clearer up here than I can there. But here you can actually see me interacting with you. So I'm good.
There you go.
Okay. So the first question, we actually had two people ask it in a little different way, but Dale Preston and Deb were asking, have you ever recorded at the Alley in North Hollywood? And if so, have you heard, no, I've heard you were sworn to secrecy, but is there anything you can tell us if you have?
The Alley in North Hollywood. I guess it's a.
Didn't the Alley used to be either Red Zone before it became the Alley? I think I that could be true, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think I may have recorded there. There aren't many places I haven't been. It's weird. And when you say sworn to secrecy, about recording there or something about the Alley?
I think it's about the Alley. From what I understand, that a lot of stuff went on there, and you couldn't tell anybody what went on in the rooms.
I actually just watched a show, Ghost Adventurers, who were at the Alley last night on the show, and you said Jack White. His signature was on one of the bricks inside the studio. Of course, they had Eric Clapton, Michael Jackson, and Lennon and McCartney, but now it's supposed to be like a fabled haunted area in North Hollywood, but I think it was actually called the Red Zone prior to being the Alley. It was built in the 70s by a man and his wife, but it was like the most secretive place where they had like 30 back rooms where all the rock star stuff happened at, and it was a sworn to secrecy kind of place.
Yeah. And you know what? I happened into that by accident. There was an artist out of Venezuela, Franco de Vita, and he wanted to use as a not George de la Rue, but another composer to do some orchestrations on the album we were doing. So I brought him to I brought him to Ocean Way for that, but Red Zone, we did a horn overdubs with Jerry Hay, and that was in the day. And it's funny because even then it had this kind of reputation of I wouldn't say don't kiss and tell, but it something was going on there. That's funny. Yeah. All right. Well, sorry, I don't have the mental capacity right now to go back there.
Okay. And then we had a question from Brenda Preston. She asked, when you were a kid, when did you know that you were going to be doing what you were doing? Was it really understandable to you at that time what you were going to be doing for the rest of your life?
No, it wasn't. As most kids, I was just flying by the seat of my pants. I was tired of playing the violin. I was gifted, so I had a nice vibrato. That's what got me into the Hollywood Bowl you were talking about at 6, but then I switched to piano. I did very well with that. And then I started singing, and the showmanship producer started to happen. That's where that started to take place. But as far as deciding what you want to do for like the rest of your life, or thinking that's what I want to do, I knew I wanted to sing. And there was one of my early bands, a dear friend of mine, John Rosenthal. He became the band manager, but then went to LA Recording Arts or whatnot to study engineering at that same time. And it's like, I was all about, hey, I've been overdubbing like this. What about the gain structure going here? What about this? What about that? I was like full of questions. And so I didn't know that I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't understand about producing. I just knew I knew how to sing, and I was a good musician. So what I think might be the answer to that question is the secret to knowing what you want to do or what you'll be happy doing, which I think is the real question, is to follow the string of excitement. Whatever excites you, that's what it's there for, to tell you this has resonance within your being. And follow that. By me following that, it gave me 4 careers. I was a singer, post-production, film, record engineer, producer, and I'm a teacher. So, you just follow along the dots. And you know what? I made so many mistakes. It is just, whoever's got their eye on me has really kept in touch with me, because through it all, I ended up doing really, really well at just about everything that I tried. You know, we've all made mistakes we wish hadn't done, but I am really so very lucky. And I think when you follow that string of excitement, it just naturally leads you to what really feeds your soul and what feeds the people around you and puts you in places in regard to other people where they really needed you, or you have the right thing to tell them, or they have the right thing to say to you. Okay, go on with something else.
Is that what you had
have
for
time
now,
for
Jess?
one more or later?
Yeah, give him one more. Give him
Yeah.
one more.
So Mike wants to know what part of your career has been the most rewarding?
Because you've done so many different things, so many, you know, there's teaching, there's producing, there's playing, you know, there's just, you know, so many things to look at. That's a tough one.
I'll tell you from my perspective now, maybe the people would want me to make a choice and say, oh, it was engineering records, or you could say it was performing on stage, whatnot. But for me now, the most important thing that I really relish is that as a producer, my son, Christian, even as he was growing up, I gave him the opportunity to play the piano, the opportunity to play the guitar, the opportunity to see things in production, the opportunity to really understand all these things, thinking that they were probably part of his DNA. And sure enough, he did. He picked up out of that. He's become extraordinarily talented improvisationalist for jazz saxophone, playing all the saxophones. He's an incredible rock drummer. I mean, just, you know, has got the ideas and the knowledge of a pocket and where to push, where to pull, all the intricacies that come from years and years. He's like somehow knows this stuff. It's great. So one of the greatest, I think, satisfying things for me was to pass it on in a way that I knew was in a way that I thought was the right way to do it, and see it work out. That's what's satisfying.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jess. We'll see you here after a bit.
Okay, thanks.
You don't recognize that room, Magic? You stared at it for 16 hours straight one day.
I recognized it up there.
Oh, okay.
So Magic, let's talk about some of the names that you worked with. I know there's a lot of comments of people saying that they, you know, Michael Jackson. How was your work with Michael? How was your interaction?
Well, working with Michael was in a different sort of way, because Michael was producing the Jennifer Holliday project at A&M, and I was working with his long-time. No, that was Sergio Mendes was doing something else. No, he was producing Jennifer Holliday, and he was like just sitting. I don't know. Do you remember Studio D at the back of A&M, where the control room is kind of not deep. It's a little shallow. And he was sitting is kind of in the back going, yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's try that. And just basically producing the track for Jennifer. And
Right.
Nicest person in the world. Gentle, laughing a lot of the time. It was like he didn't need to be there, kind of. He was just like cheering her on. Almost everything she did was just fine and just perfect. I think only once or twice did he ask her to do something a little bit different. And it was one of the joyful moment for me.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Mike, his signature microphone that he would love to sing on was a Shure SM7. And that's what his longtime engineer, Bruce Swedeen, who I got to do projects with, used for him. And when he came in, was trying to feel the ideas for that, and he laughed that I remembered these other things from, you know, his other engineers and places that he'd worked at. And I loved him. It was really fun.
Wow.
And wasn't there something to do with the summer record? That's what Bernie had told me once, that you had worked with him on the summer record. I'm not even familiar what the summer record is. Maybe that's.
No,
Yeah,
that was another time. That was the Summer Love album.
okay.
That was a Summer Love album, and I was working with the producer and guitarist, not Joe Pizzullo, Tony Peluso. And do you know that name from an association with the Troubadour? Tony had something to do with the Troubadour, but we did that project, and it was a long time ago. I don't remember a lot, but it was fun.
I remember Bernie mentioning that to me, something about it. I went, oh, okay, I didn't know. I mean, obviously you and Bernie had a special relationship together, you know, when he had worked with you guys. And you had I met him because of you guys, and we had a great relationship up until his passing, which will be 9 years on the 14th of August.
9 years.
Already. Yeah.
What a gifted guy. He was just fun. He detail oriented.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. He did
super smart.
Really, really smart.
Yeah.
So some of the comments from the audience here, Magic, Dave Wood says, Magic should write a book with all of these great stories. Sure would like to read that book. We've got one from Silver, who says, music is one of the greatest gifts to mankind. It's really appreciated to get to listen to these stories from you. Dale says it's great to see somebody that's so talented and gifted also be so humble. Cheryl Wright says, Robbie, he probably felt bad for you and picked you to be in the band because you looked homeless at your audition.
Probably. I probably did. Of course, I looked a lot younger back then, but you know,
Right.
a young homeless guy.
You look great, man.
Michael says Magic is a fitting name for you because you're an unreal spiritual and inspirational personality.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you to those folks that posed those questions and those opinions and statements. That's really nice. You know, this is a really nice format to be able to talk to people about things that have happened in your life. And there's a lot of different areas of stuff. You guys have kind of breached a few memories for me. There's a few different things, but go ahead with either questions or ideas or whatnot. I'll get into them as they become appropriate somehow. I'm thinking about different post-production things because you mentioned some of the films that I'd worked on, some of the things that, you know, that way. And there was something that I thought I was going to talk about a little earlier, but now that I remind myself, you know, teaching in the record industry, I wanted to mention this, is very different than the way it was for years in post-production audio, because that is a union position. And when I first started there, many of the union workers in audio, they would be processing the dailies for a myriad of 16 films shooting in town right away. So what the dailies are is the way that the director can see the scene with audio of what he shot the day before. And so you take it off of whether it was a Nagra or later on it became, you know, different other machines, and you roll it off onto single strike film. And then that film gets sprocket locked to the picture that was developed from that day. And so you started them at like 6 o'clock in the morning, you get them out by like 6:45 or whatnot. It rushes over, you record them to the single strike, rushes over, it gets put together and the director sees it. So you would have like 16 to 18 guys doing dailies in these massive rooms in the mornings. And then by 8:30 in the morning, mind you, they're doing a 10.5-hour shift. The rest of the day was reading the newspaper. And is it lunchtime yet? Okay, going to lunch and then coming back and reading the newspaper. But they were afraid that if they taught other people how to do their job, they would lose their job because it was a very lucrative position, but it was also kind of, you know, very padded. I mean, believe me, there were a lot of people that were working their butts off, you know, in the studios of those days, but not in this particular area. But in records, and also my experience when I was in post-production, because I did teach a lot of people, And there are a lot of people that are doing work and mixing and, still in the industry right now that I had a real hand in kind of bringing them along and whatnot. And as a matter of fact, they would scatter out in studios all over the city. And every time there was an opening, it was Magic, the hiring over here at Universal, or, somebody over here at Paramount, just blah, blah, blah. It was, it enabled me to go to my higher ups to say, well, I am making scale right now, but I am also aligning these machines. I'm dealing with HBO. I'm doing this over here, blah, blah, blah. There's an offer out there for more money. So, it made it so that I always had my finger on the pulse of what was going on in the industry. And that was nice. People have a real nice giving way. When you teach them, they appreciate it. And when you teach them over and above and give them insights, they really appreciate it. So I think that is my takeaway from the satisfaction of doing that. And I'll tell you another area that was really fun to do. I don't know if you get the chance to do this too much, Robbie, but studio design is that I first started doing it in South America, put in studios down there. And then over here at Los Angeles Music and Arts Studio, they asked me if I would design a film scoring studio for them. And I did, and it is beautiful. I lost you, Robbie. Are you not in the picture anymore?
I think Robbie lost connection, but he'll be back. We'll just keep going until he gets back.
We just keep on going. So designing studios is actually a real fun thing to do.
Right.
These days, you don't need $500,000 to put in a studio, or $1 million too. Depending on what kind of studio you're putting in.
Right. Yes,
you can put in large things for affordable amounts. Well, for some people it's affordable, for some people not.
That's something I'm honestly interested in because of what I do for a living. And I would like to venture into doing some voiceover work and, the fun stuff. Being a radio DJ, I get up every morning and I talk for 4 hours and I do a live show and I do commercials and those kind of things. But to break into doing some voice work and having a home studio where you can make it sound good, that would be really, really key.
Yeah, with a voice like yours, I can tell from your speaking voice, that although I haven't listened to you on the radio, I can already tell, what a great character voice you've got.
Oh, thank you.
Putting in a studio is these days not, well, the word is not hard at all, and it's really not. But what ends up being the problem is really internet, online, the ins and outs of protecting softwares and doing this type of that and formatting your system for the needs that you have. But getting that under control is not too hard to do. And you could set up a studio for voiceovers.
Okay.
Super, super easy. And, if you wanted to invest like, $1,100, that would you probably already have access to a great mic, but a really nice mic pre and a in and out hardware for your computer. And boom, you've got the ability not only to do that. I mean, you could get away with much less too, but I'm thinking I'd like to give you something that would be, really good quality, because anybody can get away by spending $160 on a 2-channel hardware and $150 on a little mic pre and put it into your computer with a free piece of hardware and boom, you're on your way.
Right.
But it's not the same quality as having a good microphone that'll properly give you the detail out of your voice, and a mic pre that will warm you in the nice areas and make sure that there's not a large noise floor. And, these things will make it so that you can do a great job. It's not expensive.
Well, maybe if you're okay with it, I'll get your number from Robbie and we can discuss that at another time, because I would love to get that information, brother. Absolutely.
We'll do that for sure.
All right. Robbie, what happened to you, my brother?
you know, the computer just all of a sudden said I needed to install something. I'm like, what? Wait a minute, you've been on here.
You had this look on your face like,
I was like, wait a minute. And I figured I would just come in here and take over for, you know, Jessica's on in this computer.
I thought either Robbie had a stroke or his computer has crashed because
it didn't crash. It just froze up, and all of a sudden it just was like, install something. I was like, wait a minute, putting on my glasses, and what am I supposed to install? And
So,
why now?
right. So Magic, I want to go back a little bit to the spirituality and positivity and stuff. And obviously we live in an era where we are just completely drowning in negativity and I don't want to go into politics, but there's a lot of hate being pushed right now. And everything I do, I get up every morning and I check my pre-scripts for my show, and it's, you know, coronavirus and COVID and Trump and negative and negative and negative and negative. And before I get onto my show, and I work for Jack FM, so my shows are supposed to be like, hey, it's 103.5, it's Jack FM, and blah, blah, blah. And I get on my show and I'm like, you know, and it's so draining on your spirit and on your personality and who you are, you know, and I try very hard to keep it upbeat and keep, you know, a smile and to drive some positive information and some real information. And then I end my show every day with, you know, I say one love, one family, bless you, we'll see you tomorrow. So how is it that you can keep that inner light shining as bright as you are in an area, in a time where there's everything trying to extinguish that?
Man, I hear your question, and I feel what you go through, and bless your heart for turning it to be able to project that positivity in a time, like you say, where if you really look, there isn't a lot to be positive about, but that's a perspective. Let me try to say something to you that relates it to music or to the producing of music. And that is that if you look at all of life as your sounding board, now this implies a mental position that says that, yes, I acknowledge the creator in you, because we are all the one, and I acknowledge that he is part of you. And then you go forward to say, and even your personality can't mess that up, because you are perfection. We came from perfection. That little thing that I said there is like the key to all political stuff too, because someone who is having an opinion and another opinion, immediately, by the nature of us being human beings, we want to have some type of forcible interaction, either try to evangelize this person to believe this or evangelize that person to believe that, instead of simply knowing that their perspective is important and important for me to understand. My job, if you call it a job, is not to correct them, be them, or tell them how to be. My job is to benefit from what they tell me and be their sounding board. Say, for instance, I don't believe what they're saying, but if you don't look at it as like, oh, I got to really set them straight, or what the hell is wrong with them, or Jesus, get me out of here. If you actually give them the validity of saying, you're in my life because I treasure you for some reason or other. This could be a friend that you used to go play polo with, whatever. But for whatever they came into your life, they're saying something of value. And by listening and not waiting to speak, you know, many times when we have an opinion, they're saying something, you're going, just waiting to say what you have to say, because we all wish to express what we know. If you could just take it down a step and settle into that, you do know, and I totally know. And in my total knowing, I brought you into my world to tell me what you have to say. Not for me to correct you, not for me to help you with it, just simply to interact with you, you know the theory of tit for tat. You want to have a conversation with a girl in a bar? offer something. If she offers something back, then you offer something, they offer something, and it goes back and forth. Yeah. Well, the same thing with life is that exact same thing. There's this killer album that I just finished mixing, and they're wonderful people. Now, I won't get into it because there's a certain person there that I disagree with about politics. Okay. Now, right at the mention of disagreement, it started to do this combativeness type thing until I completely explained to him that I need to understand what you have to say, why you think this and why you think that. And I got it all, but he didn't ask for what maybe I thought about it. He didn't ask for what my perspective was on it. So therefore, it told me that I don't need to hit him over the hammer with it. I don't need to tell him what I need to tell him. He was just simply there to play a part on my stage. Therefore, I totally got what he said. And I even discussed it with him a little bit, was a little bit of a sounding board with him, but I didn't feel the compulsion to tell him how crazy and off base he was and what a nuthole he was. But
right.
But does that kind of speak to what you're talking about?
It is. It's just so disappointing that we are now in a culture where we can't listen with empathy. We can't listen with compassion. And like you said, where, I may not agree, let's say with Robbie and I, we talk endlessly. And there's sometimes Robbie will say something and I'm like, yeah, I don't really agree with that. Or I'll say something and he's like, yeah, I don't really agree with that. But you don't chastise them. You don't tell them, you're way off base. You don't do any of these things. You try to build a partnership and to say, okay, well, I wouldn't have seen it that way, but I can understand why you see it that way. So let's try it. Or let me bend a little bit to where you're not going to bend it. And this give and take. And we don't do that anymore. It's just, oh, you don't agree with me? Well, you're an idiot. Hate. And
that's true. Now picture yourself at a piano with Robbie. And now he's trying to show you a chord structure, and you're trying to write the melody to it or the chorus leading hook line. And He says he'd like to do this. And you say, well, I thought it should go like this. And you both understand what you each want. There comes the sounding board part. And my typical would be, let's try it your way first, because we'll both know when it's the right thing. Again, you trust that the universe is always there and acting on your behalf. And, deeper into my thing is that every thought is a command to the universe. And so producing is actually life. Producing, and I teach my students this, it's dealing with your parents, it's dealing with your co-writer, it's dealing with your teacher. Producing is dealing with your little sister. It's the same thing. It's trying to realize the best out of them that they could possibly be, instead of trying to hammer people down. And remember how we started our interview? I said I don't like talking about myself. What I didn't say is that I understand this is Los Angeles, and that unless you toot your own horn to a certain extent, you won't even come on the blip on the screen at all.
Yeah.
So there is a weighing of that. And, Phil Collins told me something very important. He stood there. This is after the album that I'd done with him. He came to Todd AO one day. I was just telling somebody this the other day. And I was coming out of the video layback department up to the front where they put things that are going to leave the studio. And I was just in the middle of it, just kind of flat on the floor. And I look up, and there he's sitting there. And I swear it was the same shirt that he wore at the session over at Ocean Way. And he's just sitting there looking at me like this. And I look up, and I didn't recognize him at first. And Phil? Well, it's about bleeding time, Magic. What the hell? He becomes small to match the degree of the person that he's with. It's immediately either joking or, when you have your finger on the pulse of who you're talking to, you can tell it's that feeling body thing. It's where you know somebody's lighthearted, or you see somebody and they've got anger in their eyes. You know, all right, I'll see you later, type of thing. But people, and I think that makes you memorable. That makes people remember you because of your ability to be in somebody else's world, to actually go in and feel what they're feeling. I hope I do that more with my wife than I as much as I talk about it, because I could just see her going, oh yeah, you were really trying to hear what I was saying at that point, weren't you, Magic?
There's always got to be one critic, right?
You know, it's interesting. I got another story I want to tell, because I've never told you this before. But and before I go into it, I'll preface with right now, with everything that's going on, you know, I know people are really panicked and stuff. And for some reason, I've been really just calm through everything, going, okay, you know, I'm not working like we've been working. Normally we're out touring and making money and everything, but the universe provides, right? So it has provided. And going back, let's say 20 years, maybe whatever it was, I remember one time, I mean, I was like, I used to month barely make it. I'd have like $3 in my account every month. Oh, it's like, oh my God, $2. One month I was $100 short. And Magic, you hired me for a session and paid me $100 and made my rent. I never told you. I was going, oh my God, that's exactly what I needed, was $100 to make my rent that month. And it was like, you gave me exactly what I needed. I came in and played not expecting to make any money. And you said, hey, I'm going to give you $100. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. Rent's due tomorrow. And $100, you know, and it's just incredible. So like, and then now moving forward, here we are, you know, 20 whatever years later. And then, you know, you hired me for that other session. And it's like, each time it's like, oh, you know, hey, it's just what we need to make the mortgage. That's the extra boost we needed. And through this whole time, for these last 6 months, I've just been surprisingly calm about it all, going, you know, it's just works out. Something happens every month that is like, okay, we got our mortgage payment, we got this, we got that. It's going to come from where, I'm not sure, but it's going to come, and it does. But I want to thank you for that $100, because let me tell you, at that time I was more panicked. I was like not calm like I am now, but I was really just like, oh, what am I going to do? And I think it was an acoustic session on something you had going on. And
well, forgive me for not paying you what you were worth. I'm sure $100 was not valuing you correctly. So I'm listening to this and going, Magic, you cheapskate. What the hell?
No, to me, it was like, I couldn't believe I walked out of there going, oh my God, I got my rent made. I didn't know how I was going to make my rent. And I was like, and not only that, but then I also, you were using the KM 184s, the Neumanns on the acoustic guitar, and the way you mic them. I always remember that because I was using those. I bought those same mics years later. So I kept in mind, oh, he mic'd this one, the 12th fret, this one over here. And I was like, oh, that's how Eric Clapton, you did for Eric Clapton. So I thought, if it's good enough for Eric, it's good enough for me, I think.
Right?
Oh man. And to your larger point is that something as serious as what's going on right now, you say you've got a calm that's happening for you. Well, also realize that there really is no other game in town. What's happening is so inordinate. A virus. For instance, Christian didn't get to have the end of his senior year, no prom, no homecoming, no graduation, all of this. And of course, you know, they're distraught. That whole senior class is destroyed about it. But then again, you can explain or make the larger point that this is so out of your control. And it's so universal, if you will sense to say, that what you're doing, trusting the universe, is kind of all we can do, and probably all we should ever do. But that's with me not putting in shoulds. Nobody should do anything. But I would think that it's a lesson for me. And I listen to some of the stuff that's going on politically, and especially on Facebook. I'll get on Facebook every once in a while, and I'll start to go, you know, if I invest like 15 minutes writing something back to this person, I could really make this point. And then I have to take it back and go, okay, so what are you actually doing? You're feeding this part of you that wants to be understood to be better than this thought process. So again, I'm trying to bolster myself instead of simply being the observer that I'm supposed to be, the good listener, and speak when it's appropriate. And there are times when I think it is appropriate, and the political climate, but just the universe, it's a serious thing and the universe is going on. And so it makes it a little easier if you can try to explain it to people who are so caught up and, they're up to here with it. They can hardly breathe. They're really upset, school, all the stuff going on. I won't go into all the reasons why or for all that, but with you, having your moment of being calm and being in place, you affect so many people around you. You become this telegraph pole of this very needed information. And so, yeah, you could say that maybe this person stirring your anger was important to be able you to get back into your center, and then realize that it's not anger that you wish to stir. What you wish to stir is trust. You wish to stir calm. And the idea that, bring it on. I got this. I can take it. Of course, if you see me on a ventilator next week,
right.
I want you to do a Zoom show with me, and I'll talk you through the ventilator.
Right.
And hopefully I'll still say, yeah, I'm still trusting the universe.
And I'm on the opposite end of Robbie's scale there, man. I've been so angst and stressed, but like I told you earlier, I mean, it's all morning, that's what I have to report. And by the time I get done with my show, I'm just like, it's like doom and gloom. And I try. So like, now I get done with the show and I go jump in the swimming pool with my little guy and we float around on a raft and we talk about, what's your 5 favorite foods and what's your 5 favorite places we've been, and try to get myself to come back down to center. Cause without it, I'd be popping Xanax like, it was the 80s all over again. So,
well, think about the people on the front line, or even the broadcast reporters that have to be video on TV all the time saying stuff. So my question to you would be, if anything is gleaned from this conversations that we're having, maybe there could be something that you can somehow interject, a way to tell people the sad facts at the same time as presenting hope, a way to tell people how bad things are at the same way as saying there's a possibility of expected good. And that might be out of the purview of your news reporting, because people could say, well, wait, that's not news reporting anymore. Now you're giving me your opinion. Right. So I realize it's a fine line.
And it is. And then there's so many topics that are forebode, and you got to be so careful to walk a line that you're not on one side or the other. And then things that are being deemed, I watched a very interesting show today by several doctors across the country that came forward as called like the white coat something. And they spoke about things that are put in place to hinder us, and talked about medications that work, the hydroxychloroquine, zithromycin, and zinc, that this is a magical cure, and people that even have ailments. And it was all these doctors like UCLA and Mayo Clinic and Houston Heart, like, well-respected doctors coming forward saying, hey, we're tired of being quiet and this stuff works. And when you're reporting on it, it's like, okay, so am I saying that the other side's lying? Because if I am, the heavens and earth are going to crash down on my head. Right. And you've got to kind of walk that fine line. And sometimes I just want to be completely honest and tell people what my truth is. But I know I wouldn't have a job at the end of the day.
And that's sad. But instead of saying the word sad, let's say necessary, because there is so much distruth or truth that is hinged on what it can do for you out there. Even people who think that this is the way, or people that have studied, I could tell you how many studies that came out of Italy and Sweden, and people that have gone through it, and everyone has their take on it. And if 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 the conspiracy theories are actually in place, and that's really what's happening, it still wouldn't change what we have to do now to stay healthy. You still
Right.
got to wear a mask. You got to stay away from people. You still got to do some of these things, but it opens up the door for a lot of people to say, well, really, the reason why this virus was created in China was to crush the, all these things are floating out there. And if you spend a little time with any of them, they all have a reasonable listening point. They all make some kind of sense. But there is one thing, and I know that, you have a sensitivity for your radio show, and
Right.
there's probably something for this, but I will say that all the protesting, as much as it's not honoring what's going on with the health situation,
Right.
I do feel very strongly that these 400 years of taking advantage of a humanity, being the black race, really needs to be repaired. And I'm all up for whatever we need to do to make it right, and not make it so every time a police car comes up behind you, whether you're black or Chicano or white, you always have that fear of, well, if I say the wrong thing, I can absolutely end up getting, gun whipped and have something horrible happen to me or my passengers, or shot. And so, I do believe that something needs to be done there. And I don't mean to turn off any of my listeners or your listeners with an opinion, but when you feel strong about something, and that's not to say that I don't listen to other opinions. It's just something that every now and then, like the Congressman John Lewis that just passed away, he was beaten in demonstrations within an inch of his life, and then came back to find the right side of the government, become a congressman and a leader within the system.
Right.
A system that had, horribly mistreated him and taken advantage of him. So sometimes even the rudest things turn out to be a real redeeming factor, something that you wouldn't expect. And God bless us all.
I think injustices have happened to a lot of people, and not just blacks and Hispanics, and I mean the Irish, the Italians. There was injustices throughout time.
Yeah.
I will tell you that for any man to be made to feel less is wrong. And I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what you're straight, gay. It doesn't matter. To be treated as that you are not equal, or to be less of a man or a woman, or whatever the case may be, is wrong in my eyes. It's wrong in my spirituality, period. I don't agree with the hate mongering that is going on today. I can tell you that, and this isn't something I don't think I've ever shared publicly on a show or even on my show, but I spent time in prison myself. And for me to sit here and tell you that is very difficult, but first time ever in trouble with the law. And I took a prison sentence for that. And I've never in my life felt any reality of white privilege. I grew up with a single mother. I grew up dirt poor. My mom worked day and night. She was a cocktail waitress at night. She worked at other jobs during the day. And we struggled, and we lived in cockroach infested apartments, and, struggled our entire lives, didn't have a dad in the thing. And the first time in trouble, I went to prison, brother. And there was no get out of jail free card because of the color of my skin.
No. Well, God bless your heart for coming across with that. And hopefully you're doing it at a time, because we have had the discussion of the proper things that fill in the blanks of your life, help the others around you. You may have helped countless people by just what you just said, having had that happen to you. And
racism's only going to end when we stop referring to each other as black men or white men or Hispanic men.
I agree.
When we just start saying men, hey, I had Magic Moreno on the show last night. I don't have to talk about your ethnicity. I don't have to talk about your culture. We had Jay Lee on the other night, and fantastic human being.
Yeah.
You know, great actor, director, writer. I never have to go back and say, well, he's black, because that is racism. Yeah, learning how to talk about each other and to promote each other in a way that's not about this, man. I mean, because at the end of the day, this doesn't matter. What matters is what's in here, man. What matters is what's in here, and we're all from one family, one love. It's
yeah.
I get so tired of it. It's don't defend what happened to your culture by promoting racism towards a different race. And that's what's going on. The hatred is blanketed. And I don't understand that. So I feel bad for the things that have happened, the atrocities that have happened in this country over the years, the segregation and the birth of all of it, and what had happened in the Wilson era and the Democratic era back in the 1850s and early 1900s. It was a horrible, horrible thing that's happened in this planet. And yes, we need to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
I completely agree with you. And you said it exactly right. That's exactly the way I think people should feel. You can leave it up to them to define themselves for you. But walking up and saying, I already have a predisposed attitude about who you are. And, and it's difficult, even from the law enforcement standpoint. I mean, they don't want to get shot. They don't want to get killed. They're, most of them, you got to believe that they're in it because they wanted to help people to start with.
Right.
You do understand that no matter what job you do, if you get beaten down on it enough, you tend to just, put in the time and stop being so much for the philosophical aspect of why you got into it.
Right.
But however it comes out, each of us has a different piece that we bring to that puzzle, I think. I'm Hispanic, I'm Spanish French. And, my mom, my dad was very complacent in a sense because my mom was the go-getter, put this business together, put that business together. My dad would, he did a number of jobs that he would give. Of course, he was the musician and very calm. And, I got a lot of my talents from my dad. But, my mom, we didn't have a lot, but she kept making something out of nothing.
Right.
Like, she was working, I think, in a car dealership, and somehow with a partnership with another person, she put together built right carburetors. And then now she had a carburetor company, and then she had a crew that was doing this. And then that expanded into somehow she was running the office for Rolls-Royce of Beverly Hills. So wow. She kept, this kind of that. And what she taught me is that don't define what you can have. She would say, you want this? Yes, you can have that. But she would either get it for me or get it, see that I got it for the purpose of me not growing up as a poor person wanting to stay poor because that's all I knew. Right. She infused into me the fact that you deserve whatever you can imagine. Whatever you can imagine and you go for it, you deserve it and you can have it. It's only people that say, no, I can't. A lot of people, you tell them that every thought's a command to the universe, but they'll say, hey, you know what? I'm going to have a brand new house. I'm going to have that house because I want it. We need it. It's going to happen. But in the back of their head is this very, very loud voice that's still going, what are you, crazy? What are you going to do for a down payment? You know where you came from? Nobody's in your house. Nobody in your family's never owned a house. You're not going to be good enough for this. What about your job? Blah, 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 blah. And with this whole scenario going on in back, all you're doing to the universe is saying, come here to the house, but go away, go away, go away. And people who say, come here, go away, nothing happens. They flatline their existence in the universe. And this is where you have people kind of never going up the ladder, never going down the ladder, just kind of living their life. And I think that generally happens in things that you do that you have to do instead of stuff that are fun to do. Things that are fun to do that have that excitement thing, it's like oh, good. Yes, somebody else, they want me to do this over there. I've never done that before, but I'm up for it. Here we go. Teach me how to do it. I can do it.
Right.
And it opens up that whole other side of excitement to doing, and it clamps down on that negativity of the political scene, the racial scene, the whole thing. It's like I can let all that be, and it touches me when it's supposed to, I think. I mean, I have a lot of theories, but I'm far from the actuator of all of these theories. I do my best.
Right.
But part of it is being able to say what your truth is, like you said. And when you say that's your truth, that's really what you think. That's what you believe.
Yeah, you don't let the loud voice overtake.
Yeah.
Super important. I mean, I know me growing up, we grew up kind of poor, and I know Jessica grew up poor, and it becomes a poverty consciousness. It's hard to shake that poverty consciousness. It took me a long time to shake that off, because the voice is always telling you, oh, you can't. I mean, I remember going and I would look at houses like the house I'm living in. When I first moved to California, I go, I want a house like this. And then eventually I just kind of got the voice out of there. And all of a sudden I'm living in a house like that,
You do. You got to get that voice out of there.
Yeah.
You absolutely do. And you know what? It's close to, very close to my father passing away. Bless his heart. I mean, I developed into a man and stuff going on, but he still gave me the same advice as when I was a little one, when I wanted something. And he just thought it was a little over my pay grade or over what I deserved. And he'd say, I walked to school for 5 miles in the snow every day. It was still always making the bar down here as far as what you deserved. Or maybe I forget how my example goes. Either the bar's really high or the bar's really low, but it still brought it down to the opposite of what my mom was trying to do. She was trying to say, example, at 16, I had come out of the Mitchell Singing Boys. I now had we were doing bars 6 nighters a week, and I really wanted to buy my own B3 Hammond. Well, my dad, of course, hey, I went 5 miles in the snow. We're going to have a Hammond. We're going to argue. What are you, crazy? Blah, blah, blah. My mom said, yeah, you can have that. I'll give you the down payment. You pay me back for everything and make the payments. I paid on that organ until I was 25.
Wow. Oh,
yeah, I still didn't know my finances. So yeah, the interest kept going up and up and up. And I probably paid like $15,000 for that thing.
Oh my God.
But it was a good point. It's what made me go, hey, you want to be the lead singer for this group? You want to be the writer for this? You want to stand in front of a lot of people and be an MC? You want to teach a crowd? You want to sit in front of world-class producers and give your suggestions and have them value, what you have to say about pitch, about timing, about, the proper feel for a line. That's what came from my mom. She said, you can be this if you think it, if you conceive it. Yeah. Yeah.
Powerful. It's really powerful.
Powerful stuff, man.
How cool. I could sit here all night. Everybody, in fact, we've got so many people writing in comments right now. Jay Mars says, Mr. Magic, your approach to life is same as mine. Please, thank you so much for reaffirming who I am and how I believe.
God bless him.
My mom says, okay, Magic, you need to come to San Angelo, Texas, because there are thousands of people here who would like to sit down and have coffee and a convo with you. You're exactly what the world needs right now.
I would love to sit down with your ma. All right, tell her I'm expecting the invite.
All right, man. I'm going to send it to you, brother. I'm going to send it to you. Steve Cook says, I vote Magic for president.
Steve Cook.
Well, Steve,
you had talked about doing that, coming out and doing a thing there. Maybe if that ever works out, when things clear up, maybe we both come out,
That would be great. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, it would be a great time.
We were talking about having an 80s party here in San Angelo, and Robbie was going to be a guest, and come out and hang out and be part of it with us. And I think it'd be great to have both of you come out, because that'd be
I would love that. I would love that. Please
fantastic.
send me that invitation.
I will,
That's
my
great.
brother. I will. We'll get that set up here just as soon as some of this craziness goes away, and that it's we can get those venues, because right now the venues are the hard part. I also do concert promotions, and that's how Robbie and I met. Is I booked them for a couple of shows.
A couple
And-
of 7 shows.
Yeah, I put them on a stage 7 times.
All right.
In Nebraska and Texas, and yeah.
Yeah, I
Well-
fell in love with the guys, and Robbie was so cool. Like you were talking earlier, Magic, is Robbie and I, the first show, we didn't really even talk. We didn't really connect. There was nothing. And then the
I
second
don't think I
time-
met you that first show that I remember.
Yeah.
The second show you came backstage and we just were like,
Ah.
he's like, "Oh, dude, you got to check out this new music we're working on." So it's like this room with everybody sitting and talking, and like I've got these headphones on, and I'm listening to what they just did, and I'm watching Rob, and he's watching me, and I'm like, "Wow, I can get into this. You know, this is a
Wow.
connection that I can work on." So, yeah, he definitely has that spirit about him that you can relate to and connect to. It's probably why we're doing this now.
Absolutely.
yeah, we're just trying to reach people, and it gives everybody the opportunity to get away from everything else that's going on and reconnect, and then hopefully when they go back they feel better. Just like God, everybody, because everybody brings their part, like you said, and if
I
you
would
bring
say.
your part and you're calm about your part, it affects everybody else.
Right.
Everybody else feels when you, like, if you forgive somebody, the forgiveness is given, everybody else feels it helps everybody.
It really does.
Somebody else connects to that,
You know, something I learned about forgiveness, and this kind of just struck me very odd one night, as I was talking to this gentleman, and I'll kind of go into the spirituality portion of it here. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and I had long hair, and it's the 80s, and one of the brothers came over to me and he told me, he said, "Look, you need to cut your hair because you're confused about your sexuality." And I went, "Huh?" And he says, "Well, you got long hair like a girl, but you're a boy. So you need to make a decision." And I said, "Well, that doesn't confuse my sexuality." And I said, "And doesn't Jesus right on the cross behind you have long hair?" And he goes into this fit of rage, like, "You are comparing yourself to Jesus?" And I said, "Well, yeah, you've taught me that he's my brother, right? We're both
Right.
sons of God. We're
That's
both
right.
creations of God. We're brothers. Oh, you blasphemer, get out of church. Don't ever come back here." Threw me out. So I kind of got away from the whole religion thing for a long time. And when I came back to it, I was filled, after I'd done my little forced vacation, I was filled with a lot of anger and hate and resentment, and wouldn't forgive things and couldn't get past those things. And I had this guy sit down to me one night and he says, "So you believe in God, right? You believe in moving forward, whatever your higher spirit is, you believe that you need to progress after you leave this planet." And I said, "Absolutely." He said, "So there's going to be an atonement, right? There's going to be a time where you're going to have to sit down and answer for the things that you've done in your life. And you're going to want forgiveness for those things." And I said, "Well, yeah." And he says, "Okay, so how do you ask for forgiveness when you're not willing to give it?"
That's a very interesting thing that he said. And I would have bought into that a number of years ago, even though they are wise things to say.
Right?
But that whole, when he got into the forgiveness thing, especially the person that shut you down, I'll give you my take on this, and hopefully it doesn't anger you. But when he got into, you're going to have to atone for. Now, I know this is the basis for so many, many religious ideas. So his reason for why you should forgive is because you will want to be forgiven in your future. Okay, well, that's a type of anthropomorphizing of God. Now, people believe that God somehow is this white-haired guy with a big long beard. when you die, going to decide whether you go up or down.
Idea.
Right.
And that was the idea of, just for me, tell your mom this is just from me, that that idea was just too cartoon for me. It's
Right.
like, how does the source of this universe that organizes down to the most minute part of an atom, to the veins in your body, to the veins in a plant, to the superstructure, just the whole width of everything, and think that that somehow is a guy, or somehow is going to have a lot in common with the personality that we have. So
Right.
I view it as more of the universe is a force, and that you can call that God, you can call God Bob, for all anybody cares, or for all God cares, because a being, as I would reason, as evolved as that, is not going to buy into these petty things. And if you're really a representative of this force here, living this life on your stage to be a creator being, then where does this come in that I need to be judged? I mean, we're taught not to judge. I mean, you want to assess things, but
Right.
not to judge. A lot of there are masters that have said that the original golden rule of the 10 commandments were actually not thou shalt not. It was thou shalt. It was a positive type thing. That's a whole other story. But long story short, I'm just saying that that person, rather than going there, might have just said that, well, I would say the key to your forgiveness is knowing to forgive yourself. That's where it all starts. You not forgiving other people has always got to start with something inside you that has become the bee in the bonnet, the little thing under the saddle of the horse, the thing that just nudges you and urges you and whatnot, because you've done something wrong and you can't get away from it, or you've done something wrong and you need somebody to absolve you of it. There is that part of you that is God, or is that force that simply says anything that you did was to make you this person, to make you become what you are. And if you had to do that, and you understand that it was, most of the time we don't like things because they hurt other people. That's what you want to forgive yourself for. But
Right.
when you can forgive yourself and see how this happened, how it fit into the overall scheme of things, how it has turned out right, once you forgive yourself, it makes it, how could I not forgive them? You know, I have to forgive myself first. And, you know, it might take another half hour worth of talking to make all those dots come together for you, but, you know, for that discussion. But if that's how I feel, is that you have to forgive yourself first and realize, take responsibility for it. Is I made them mad. It wasn't me being pissed at them because they're mad. I actually pushed their buttons and I made them mad, type of thing.
I think it's a lot easier to take responsibility than to forgive yourself. And that's probably something I need to work on.
Yeah, and this wasn't about you. This was a generalization thing.
I'm very personal. I don't hide anything really from the people that I talk to. So, you know, there's a lot of things that in my own mind, I probably got to work on that way. But I
Something
like
we all do, but I think ultimately it all comes down to love. It really is, you know, it's about that. In the end of the day, that is the you know,
that's the connecting tissue.
yeah.
Love. Yeah. And yeah, if you can exude that, they say that's the language of the universe.
Yeah.
That's what makes sense. Have you ever heard the theory of upward spiral and downward spiral? Where,
No.
say for instance, here's a downward spiral. I get pissed at my car because the check oil light just went on and I've really got to be somewhere, but I know I'm going to blow up my car if I keep driving. Hold on
That's a downward spiral. Okay, so
yeah.
upward spiral.
So something's going in a downward way. Okay. Then you get mad where you stop because you're pissed off already, and you say something to the guy that says, "Hey, look, I'm about to close. I can't, blah, blah." So again, it goes downward. And then because your emotions are negative, it goes to create the next negative thing. And your emotions are next negative. So you do this spiral all the way down. As you follow it with anger, it creates a thing. Your unhappiness, it creates a thing. And it gets out of control. Or you break the path and you start an upward spiral by, I forgive myself. I understand that had I had stopped at the right time to get this wouldn't have been with the car. And God bless you, sir. I realize this is your time off. I don't expect you to stay. When you start to do that, the upward spiral it inspires people like this guy who wants going to work on your car. Yeah, I was going to go home, but you're so nice. Okay, come on. Or something else. Somebody shows up unexpectedly. Hey, look, I'm going that way. I can give you a ride. So you see the upward spiral takes off once you break that emotional non-forgiveness or emotional anger point. Does that make any sense? Do you understand that?
It totally makes sense. There's actually two things that have happened, and I won't mention who or what, but recently where I've been texting with somebody and all of a sudden it's just getting negative, and it's like back and forth. And I broke the spiral by saying something extremely positive and changing it. In one case, just straight out telling the guy, hey man, I still love you, or something along those lines. And all of a sudden it completely changed everything. The tone all of a sudden started doing the upward spiral. And it happened in both situations. I realized that, you know what? When you do that, you don't need, it just changes everything. It really does. It changes everything.
Yeah, it does indeed.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to come to the end here, and I hate to, but we're timed up. I only set this for 2 hours, and we got 6 minutes left.
Really? Is it that
Yeah,
long?
thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed speaking.
We usually only go an hour. Wow. And that went by fast. Thank you, Magic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you guys for bringing up things that were dear to my heart and talking about things that allowed me to express myself. It's really a pleasure. Both you, Robbie, you know how much I love you and appreciate your talent.
I love you too. You know that.
And you, sir, you are just a pleasure to talk to. You're a pleasure to relate to. And thanks for being so welcoming on your show.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that very much. And you and I are going to be in touch. I do want to get you out here because I would love to sit and just talk with you for a while. So
absolutely. Let's do it. Until next time, guys.
All right.
Magic Moreno, thank you very much, my friend.
You're welcome. It's my
all right, brother.
Wow. Is it really almost 2 hours?
Yeah, we're 9:54 my time. We've been on an hour and 54.
We usually only go an hour.
Right? Exactly. It was good though, man.
Yeah, it was good. You could just keep going, you know. But
yeah, we keep going. We ventured away from all the music and the film stuff and got into some really earthy.
I told you he's always been that very spiritual, you know, guy, and and that it shows in what he's done, right?
Right.
The things he's drawn into his life, and it's exactly why when I had sat in the studio that time and I'm looking up and I'm looking at all these records on his wall and going, oh, you worked with all the biggest names in the business. I'm going, and he's never even mentioned it because he doesn't blow his own horn. He never felt the need to do it, but it was also kind of like it was just part of who he was and part of how it is, right?
Right.
So that's a very spiritual thing that when people realize that, because a lot of times people put people on a pedestal, and there's no pedestal. Everybody is on the same level. It doesn't matter who it is. I mean, we look at it and go, oh yeah, you worked with Eric Clapton, you worked with Phil Collins, you worked with, Stevie Wonder, the list goes on. I mean, I swear we were at a NAMM show one time. Stevie Wonder's there and he's got an entourage that's just huge. You can't get near him. Magic walked straight through the entourage and right up to him. It was like the C's part. It was like, but it's the consciousness. You see what his consciousness is like. It's like, nobody questioned him. Nobody anything. Walked up. Hey, wow, really?
Right.
But see, I was looking at it like, wow. But then I also understand that it's that consciousness that it's, it's not that it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? Everybody's.
No, he's definitely a beautiful human being, and he's got a great energy about him, and I can't wait to talk more with him, my brother. I really can't.
Yeah, maybe that'd be great if we did the thing you were talking about and bring him out, and I'd come out with him. I mean, I'd probably be sitting listening to him talk most of the time because he's got a lot more good stories to tell than I do. A lot more.
We'll have a
I'm okay with that.
Absolutely. So big shout out to Backbeat Music and Media Jaw for sponsoring the show. I hate to end it. We got 3 minutes left. We do have to pick a top fan, Robbie.
Oh, and Hot for Teacher. That's the bottom of Hot for Teacher. Just so you know, Brad and Kim, if you're still there, they might have checked out. And that stuff's potent.
All right. So should I just pick a name from random from our top
Sure.
fans?
I'm going to let you do it because I don't know what you're looking at.
All right. I'm going to go with Silversmith.
Silversmith. She wins
Silversmith
everything.
has won herself a autographed Hangout T-shirt, and I'll get with Silver to get an address. Those T-shirts that you guys have ordered, the amazing, over-the-toply, lovely Hangout shirts, should be in the next couple of days, and those orders will be sent out. So if you haven't gotten yours, get in touch with me.
You know what? And Silver deserves it because she's a kind person. And if you look at her Facebook page, it says, what does it say on there? I can't quote off the top of my head, but it's something like "be kind."
Yeah,
It's like,
gotta dig on that, man.
you're right,
dig
right?
on that.
Why not?
Right. So
It's
no
easy
matter
to do, I think.
right, no matter who you are, we don't care. We love you anyway, and let's just keep this thing.
Anyway,
Huh?
anyway.
We love
So-
you anyway. We don't care
Anyway.
anything about it. We love you anyway.
So next week, who do we have next week?
Who do we have next week?
Is it Marriott?
We have Stuart Marriott.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Marriott. That's one of those names, brother. You just Marriott.
Or is it that Jimmy guy?
No, it's Jimmy Cummings next week.
Oh, Jimmy Cummings is next week? Okay.
Production's my production's my wife, by the way.
You can spank her later.
Yeah, and I will.
I bet you will.
We
I'm
got Jimmy
counting on
Cummings.
you.
I won't call you from my bedroom and ask you how to set up the adult movies, though.
Yeah, sorry.
That was awkward, brother.
Hey, man, help me out. Look over this way.
Quick story. I set up a fire stick for Rob.
Hey, easy. So Jimmy Cummings is coming next week. Hey, where'd Matt go?
Did you just say Jimmy Cummings is coming next week? After that, come on, man.
Jimmy Cummings.
You're killing me. You're killing me, brother. I'm going to call you here in just a minute. We'll see you guys next
Don't
week.
do that.
Jimmy Cummings. I love you all, man. Peace out.